Gardening can be accessible to everyone. All you need to do is tailor your garden to your specific resources, needs, and abilities. I'm going to be jumping into a series these next few videos to help you get your gardening journey started off on the right foot. And I think this will be helpful not only for those of you who are just starting out, but even those who already have your garden set up. We're going to be going through planting layouts, season planning, succession planting, all kinds of tips and tricks to help you maximize your harvest. I hope that this will be helpful to you regardless of where you are in your gardening journey. Let's get into it. All right, so we have picked our location, we've picked the type of containers or in-ground system that we want. Now we need to talk about the size and the layout of our garden. So if you are, let's say that you're looking at your backyard, you need to decide how much of your yard you want to allocate to your garden. Or if you're looking at a garden, or a balcony or patio, whatever location you're in, you need to decide how much of that area you're willing to dedicate to your garden. And that's going to determine how many beds you do and the size of those beds, and the shape of those beds. Especially if you're doing your own kind of DIY build, you're able to really customize the size and shape of your either raised beds or other containers to try to really maximize your space. And so that's definitely a pro of doing your own type of build. When you're thinking about the layout, once you've decided the size, let's say that you want to do a 10 by 10 area in your yard, when you're thinking about the layout, you want to make sure that you're allocating enough space for your walkways. I recommend, especially if you're doing it in your backyard and you have multiple different beds, that you have at least one main walkway that's big enough to get a wheelbarrow through. That's going to be really helpful to you when you're moving in soil or different amendments, or even if you have a big harvest, or if you're pulling up plants, being able to have something that you can move through the garden to be able to move things in and out and get equipment in and out. Also within your beds, you want to make sure that your walkways are large enough to where you're feeling comfortable walking through the bed and you have enough space to be able to tend to your plants. So when you're laying out the way that you're placing your beds, think about the flow of that you want to be able to go through your garden, and make sure that it's a workable flow that's going to be efficient for you when you're working in the garden. The other thing that I would consider when you're laying out your beds is making sure that you're able to reach all the different parts of your beds or containers. If you have a bed, let's say like in a U shape or something like that, but it's really, really wide, you're not going to be able to reach those back corners unless you have access from the other side. So as far as width, if you're able to access both sides, the widest that I would go is 4 feet. And if you're only able to access one side of your bed, whether that be, the other side is blocked by a wall or a fence or whatever, I wouldn't go more than 3 feet, because you don't want to have growing space that you've filled with soil and that technically is available to grow crops, but then you can't really utilize it because you can't physically reach it. And so that's something to consider as well. All right, so we've picked our location, we have picked the type of beds that we want to use, we have filled those with good quality either potting soil or garden soil, and we've nailed down a layout that provides a really good workflow for ourselves. I bet you're all thinking, now can we finally garden, Tasha? Almost, we're almost there. The last thing that I want to talk about is some of the tools that you want to have available to yourself when you're first starting out with gardening. And the list is not long. When I was first starting out with gardening, there were so many different tools and gizmos and gadgets. I felt a little bit overwhelmed trying to pick what I actually needed to get growing. But honestly, as I've been gardening over the last few years, I have noticed that really the main tools that I use are my trowel, it's just like a hand shovel, and my pruning shears. When I was first starting out, I got all of these big elaborate gardening kits that had all types of different gardening tools. And I'm not going to say that those aren't helpful or that I never use them, but 90% of the time, it is just these two that I utilize when I'm gardening. Another thing that I would think about, especially if you don't like getting your nails and hands really dirty, is some gardening gloves. And with these 3 items, just these, I think that you can get started on your gardening journey. Now, there's lots of different things and options of, like I said, all kinds of tools and gizmos and gadgets that you can buy, and those can be helpful to you, but they're not necessary. One of the things that I do utilize pretty regularly is this garden stool. So basically, this acts as, you can turn it this way and it can be a seat, or you can turn it like this and it's a kneeler. And it's something that I utilize pretty regularly in the garden, and it's been very helpful to me and very helpful to my back. So that's something that you can consider. You can also consider buying different harvest baskets, but you can utilize things that you already have to hold in and bring in harvest. Another thing that can sometimes be helpful is like just a little apron where you can hold tools, and also you can, put in different your harvest in the different pockets and stuff like that. So that's something that you can consider as well. Our next video, we're going to be talking about seed starting, and depending on whether you decide to direct sow your seeds, winter sow your seeds, which is also something that you do outside, or whether you want to start them indoors, will determine if you need to buy a few more pieces of equipment to get started. But again, that's something that we're going to be talking about next time, so stay tuned. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that this was helpful to you regardless of where you are in your gardening journey, but especially for those of you who are just starting out, I hope that this encouraged you to take that first step and go ahead and get growing. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. And remember, even if you're not growing something in the ground, you can always cultivate something good in your life and in the lives of those around you. Thanks, and take care.